Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us for the second webinar in our four-part series leading up to Construction Suicide Prevention Week. My name is Isabel Whaler, and I'm the project manager for this initiative. What started as a regional initiative in Kansas City in 2019 has grown to a nationwide effort to bring awareness to the epidemic of suicide in the construction industry with the goal of saving lives. In 2022, more than 400 organizations reaching nearly 250,000 workers participated in Construction Suicide Prevention Week, and we are well on our way to exceeding those numbers this year. If you have not already, please be sure to register your company's participation on our website to receive your OSHA recognized certificate at www.constructionsuicideprevention.com. With approximately 7.5 million people employed in the construction industry in the US and far more worldwide, we still have more people who need access to the tools that could save a life and reverse the trend that has placed construction as an industry with one of the highest rates of death by suicide. The Construction Suicide Prevention Week initiative provides free resources to people in and around the construction industry to help them start conversations, hold stand-down events, and share information with colleagues who may be struggling. Our goal is to put more tools in the hands of the people who build our communities, and this webinar is one of those resources we are proud to be able to provide. We want today to be interactive, so please feel free to submit questions to the chat or Q&A. Now, let's get to today's program. Our presenters today are Phyllis Blackwelder and Barb. Phyllis is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Area Director for the Missouri chapter. Prior to starting work with the AFSP, Phyllis served as the Eastern Missouri chapter's board chair for 6 years while working as the controller of a small equipment finance and leasing company in the greater St. Louis area. Phyllis started volunteering for the AFSP after losing her son, Ryan, to suicide in February of 2013. Phyllis has a bachelor's in accounting and a double master's in finance and management. Since losing her son, Phyllis has made it her life's mission to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. Barb is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Area Director for the Greater Kansas chapter. After sadly losing 2 of her sons in 2003, she began her healing journey in 2008 by getting involved with the Kansas City Out of the Darkness Walk Committee for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. In 2010, she became the chairperson for the walk, and by 2019, she found her passion directing the Greater Kansas AFSP. To help further educate her members, she has attended many training courses, including mental health first aid and the Talk Save Lives suicide prevention education for workplace settings. Barb has also received the Missouri Suicide Prevention Project Award for community work and the Larry Guidry Senior Award for her hard work and dedication towards mental health awareness and suicide prevention. Please welcome Phyllis and Barb.
Well, welcome. My name is Barb, and we are going to ask you, if you please don't mind, to complete a pre-survey by either entering the URL or scanning the QR code on the screen. This will only take a few minutes. If you could please do that, we would greatly appreciate it. Thank you. We can begin, and then if you would like to continue, if you're not quite done answering the questions, you can continue to do that. And so we would like to say happy Thursday and welcome to the presentation of American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Workplace Setting for it's our construction edition. Suicide can be a sensitive topic to discuss. However, talking about suicide is critical to prevent it. We are grateful that you are here today to join us for this important conversation. Please feel free to ask any questions, either put it in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be monitoring those. We want it more of an open forum, so if you have a question, please don't hesitate to ask your question. Overall, we hope you learn more about suicide prevention from this webinar and become more comfortable about talking or having a conversation about that difficult topic. Suicide is a complex public health issue, yet despite how complex it is, it can be prevented. Because suicide can be a sensitive topic to discuss, how we talk about suicide matters. while the term committed suicide is common, we avoid saying committed suicide, as it just has a judgmental connotation to it. Therefore, because suicide is a health issue, it's important that we talk like it is a major health issue. We wouldn't say, just as cancer, you wouldn't say committed cancer or committed cardiac arrest. We would say, for example, passed by cancer or died of a heart attack. The same goes for suicide. Instead of for encouraging phrases stated committed suicide, we state die by suicide or death by stab. While talking about suicide attempts, we avoid referencing suicide attempts as failed or successful, and those words they have a judgmental connotation to it. So instead, we encourage those use the phrase attempted suicide.
Now that we understand the language used when talking about suicide, we'll now review global and US statistics related to suicide. Suicide is a global health problem. According to the World Health Organization, over 700,000 people died by suicide worldwide in 2021. In the United States, suicide rates are recorded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Suicide is currently the 11th leading cause of death in the United States. While these numbers change every year, the CDC reports that in 2021, 48,183 Americans died by suicide. In that same year, over 37,000 of those who died by suicide were people of working age, 16 to 64. These data show that many more Americans die by suicide than by alcohol-related motor vehicle deaths. In the United States, no complete count of suicide attempt data are available. The CDC gathers data from hospitals on non-fatal injuries from self-harm, as well as survey data. Based on the 2021 National Survey of Drug Use and Mental Health, it is estimated that among adults age 18 or older, 4.8%, or about 12.3 million people, report serious thoughts of suicide. 1.4%, or 3.5 million people, made a suicide attempt in the past year. These data show that just because someone is thinking about taking their life does not mean that they will likely die by suicide. Thinking about suicide is often a sign of distress. It is a signal to what the person is experiencing. In a 2020 CDC report on suicide rates for major industry and occupational groups, researchers identified major occupational groups, shown here, with higher suicide rates than the overall population. The suicide rates are highest in the construction and extraction occupational group, with 49.4 per 100,000 of population among males and 25.5 per 100,000 of population among females. While these data help to provide insights into the difference in suicide rates within major occupational groups, there are several limitations with this report, which may have impact on the rate. Regardless of the limitations, this report highlights opportunities for targeted prevention strategies and further investigation of work-related factors that might increase risk of suicide. It is estimated that most Americans will experience a suicide loss over the course of their lifetime. And just as any death has an impact on families, friends, and communities, suicide is no different. Workplaces can be impacted directly through the suicide death of an employee or indirectly through an employee who experiences the suicide loss of a family member, friend, or if they experience a suicide loss of a colleague, client, or vendor. Why do people take their lives? One of the most important things we have learned through research is that there is no such cause, no single cause for suicide. In fact, suicide most often occurs when several stressors and health issues converge to create feelings of hopelessness and despair. Suicide research has consistently shown that the majority of people who die by suicide have a mental health condition at the time of their death, although it may or may not have been diagnosed and adequately treated. That said, mental health conditions are common. In the United States, 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health condition in any given year, and most do not go on to die by suicide. Research has helped us to better understand the perspective of a suicidal person and have helped to inform key strategies in suicide prevention. In fact, most people who are suicidal are ambivalent about taking their life. Part of them wants to live, part of them wants to die. Therefore, critical to suicide prevention is helping the person connect with reasons for living, while at the same time helping them feel less connected to reasons to want to die. When a person has reached that moment of crisis, thinking becomes constricted, causing a state of intense tunnel vision, and in that moment, the person is unable to consider other options. In that brief period of crisis, the person cannot foresee a time when the unbearable pain will end, and therefore may consider suicide as a way to end the pain. Research provides clear evidence that in that moment of crisis, time and distance can be a life-saving measure. Time for the intense suicidal risk to diminish, and distance between the individual who is suicidal and the method of ending their life.
In this next section, we will discuss the main suicide factors, risk factors, and warning signs. Suicide risk factors can include such as biological or psychological factors, the most significant of which are mental health conditions. Depression is the most common mental health condition, and that is one of the most associated with suicide risk. Our mental health that elevate suicide risk include anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, personality disorders, psychosis, substance abuse disorders. Because these conditions put a person at greater risk, detecting the presence of a mental health condition is critically important. In addition to mental health condition, physical health factors include serious or chronic physical health conditions, including chronic pain or traumatic brain injury, can also increase suicide risk. Historical risk factors, including a history of family suicides, post-trauma, such as a childhood abuse or combat stress. Research has also found that history of adverse childhood events can contribute to suicide risk. While most people who attempt suicide do not go on to die by suicide, previous suicide attempts are also considered historical risk factors for suicide and put a person at higher risk. Environmental risk factors listed on the slide refer to circumstances of a person's life or an aspect of a person's environment that can contribute to their overall level of risk. We would like to limit the access of lethal means, and also a work setting and exposure to contagion, and the work setting can also prolong. A work setting or culture can serve as an environmental factor, prolonged job strain, job insecurity, variety of job work demands to make family responsibilities more difficult, or the opposite, when the family demands make work more challenging, can heighten job dissatisfaction and contribute to stress and or burned out. while environmental factors can lead to suicide on its own, when an individual has other factors or historical risk factors, these environment stressors can contribute to the escalation of risks. There are also other risk factors that may be unique to the construction industry, including a tough guy culture, which means the workplace with the culture in the workplace itself is bravery or recklessness. Individuals in the culture are less likely to shout for help or admit to any type of perceived weakness like stress or anxiety. Those in the work heavy positions can experience chronic physical pain or injury. Pain can interfere with job performance, job security, sleeping, and well-being. Along with the physical injuries, stress caused by concerns like feeling pressure to finish a project on time can lead to self-medication or over-medication of drugs prescribed. Substance abuse and problems to increase the risk of suicide. Construction sites that include access to big buildings, bridges, can increase a person's risk as well to suicide, particularly causing a crisis during a crisis moment. Limiting access to lethal means can help prevent suicide. Also, working long hours or abnormal hours can affect sleep, causes mental and physical exhaustion. Working with regular periods of layoffs or rehiring causes uncertainty with your employment. Not only does the financial uncertainty cause anxiety, but many workers lose access to their employee benefits. And actually, workforce still skill shortage in labor, working overtime to complete projects. All this is a combination results in an atmosphere that can be overwhelmed to employees.
The following example demonstrates how health, historical, and environmental risk factors can interact to increase suicide risk. It will also highlight the public perception of suicide, what others may know, the environmental factors, and what they may not know, the health and historical factors. Your coworker, John, recently died by suicide. Prior to his death, John had been going through a difficult time. John's wife of 30 years filed for divorce, and he had recently been overlooked for a promotion at work. While you had heard that John was going through a divorce and could tell that he seemed to be experiencing some stress at work, as John's coworker, you were not aware that John had a family history of suicide, was struggling with depression, and was drinking more than usual. When someone dies by suicide, people often perceive the environmental factors, such as divorce or work stress, as being the reason or cause for suicide. What people may not know is that the person who died may have had health factors such as depression or substance use issues, and historical factors such as a family history of suicide that contributed to their suicide death. In this example, John's underlying depression could have impacted the stress at work, or the opposite. The work stress could have worsened the depression. The key is that the combination of risk factors could have contributed to the suicide death. Therefore, while a life event can play a precipitating role for suicidal behavior, without other underlying risk factors, life events alone aren't thought to cause suicide. Now that we have a better understanding of suicide risk factors, and the second part of this module will cover suicide warning signs, while most suicide risk factors endure over a long period of time, warning signs are observable signs that signal suicidal risk in the near future. Suicide warning signs are typically displayed in three main ways that we can detect through talk, behavior, and mood. And while warning signs are not always obvious and vary from person to person, learning the warning signs for suicide can help to recognize that when someone is in mental health distress or having suicidal thoughts. Many people who are suicidal talk about ending their lives, either directly or indirectly. Remember, each person is different. While some people may make their intentions known and clear, like saying they have no reason to live or that they feel trapped or are like burden to others, other people may keep their thoughts hidden, in which case their comments and behaviors may be more subtle and go unnoticed. For example, a person might joke about it or only hint at their despair. No matter how a person talks about suicide, it's important to take it seriously, especially if they're displaying other warning signs for suicide. Behaviors related to suicide risk can include an increased use of alcohol or drugs, trouble sleeping, acting recklessly, or isolating from family and friends. Observable warning signs related to a person's behavior, especially if the behaviors or signs are unusual for that person, may also include absences from work, being late for the workday or for important meetings, talking about taking breaks more than usual, or leaving work early. A noticeable shift in a person's typical work performance may become obvious. This can include missing deadlines, decline in quality of work, being easily distracted, and even a decline in that person's enthusiasm for the job. In some cases, this may directly affect relationship with coworkers, whether those are peers, supervisors, or direct reports. They may become more difficult to work with or have unrealistic expectations for others. People at risk for suicide can display, sometimes subtly, any of the following moods, including depression, apathy, humiliation, and anxiety, essentially moods that no one expects of someone who feels overwhelmed and desperate. While many people who are suffering internalize their pain and desperation, some people express such as rage, irritability, or impulsivity. We all have ups and downs in our mood. The key is to notice changes in usual behavior patterns, changes that seem uncharacteristic or concerning. For example, if they have struggled with depression over time, changes can signal that mental health symptoms are worsening and that their risk is increasing. Another example can even be sudden unexplained happiness in someone who has been depressed, which can indicate the individual has decided on a plan and is relieved they will no longer be in pain.
In this next section, we will focus on prevention, including the different types of protective factors, with a focus on mental health, the importance of engaging in self-care, and the critical prevention strategies of limiting access to lethal means. Just like there are factors that increase a person's risk for suicide, there are also factors that reduce a person's risk for suicide. These factors are known as protective factors. Here is a few: accessing mental health care, positive attitude towards mental health treatment, social support and community connectedness, effective coping skills, problem-solving skills. We also have protective factors that include cultural and religious beliefs that encourage connection and self-seeking, discourage suicidal behavior, and create a sense of purpose. Finally, one of the most crucial protective factors is limiting access to lethal means, to suicide prevention, to mental health and treatment when it is needed. Addressing mental health can be challenging. Research suggests that less than half of individuals with a mental health condition seek treatment. One way to encourage individuals to seek help for their mental health conditions is to treat mental health like any other aspect of our health. There are certain times when a person is ill, and it's crucial for them to seek a trained professional. The same should be taken into consideration when you need to seek out medical assistance for your mental health. I always say that treat your mental health as you do your physical health. But the most important thing is to find the treatment that works best for the individual. Social support and relationships, whether it is family, friends, co-workers, and a strong community connections can also help protect from suicide risk. Research has shown that supportive workplaces can serve as a protective factor for suicide. The workplace can provide important structures and help foster relationships of connectedness. Additional workplace can offer a place of purpose, a sense of identity, and which helps give people meaning and reasons for living. Just like people can find strategies that optimize their physical health, people can do the same for their mental health. In addition to professional and mental health care, proactive self-care strategies like getting a good night's sleep, exercise, have a healthy diet, and stress management can also play a critical role in taking care of our mental health. Research has shown us that by temporarily reducing the suicidal person's access to lethal means, which gives the individual time for the intense suicidal risk to distinguish, and time for the person to intervene with mental health support and resources. For the majority of people who experience a suicidal crisis, if unable to access their chosen method, even temporarily, they are unlikely to encourage in another action to end their lives. During the period of high risk, the safer their environment is, a better chance of a suicidal person of living through the crisis period. Lastly, firearm safety is crucial to reducing the suicide rates. In the United States, used roughly in half of all suicides, making suicide prevention an important part of gun safety education.
Now that we have reviewed suicide risk factors and warning signs and key suicide prevention efforts, this last section will cover what we all can do to help prevent suicide. One of the most important things we can all do to prevent suicide is to take care of our own mental health and well-being. Getting a good night's sleep, nutrition and exercise, and employing stress management techniques such as meditating are important components to staying well. Connecting to family, friends, and other social networks for support is also helpful in boosting your wellness and resilience. Reach out to people who you trust, who can be sympathetic and non-judgmental. Many people also find it helpful to seek care from a mental health professional, whether they are experiencing stress, depression, or other mental health concerns. Caring for our own mental health and well-being will enable us to help better support others. There are three main things we can all do to support someone we think may be at risk for suicide, including watch out for suicide warning signs, reach out to the person by having a caring conversation, know the resources, encourage the person to seek help. As covered earlier, suicide warning signs typically display in three main ways: through a person's talk, their behavior, and their mood. Remember, warning signs may be subtle and can vary from person to person. If you see warning signs, reach out to the person you are concerned about. Before covering the steps on what to do, here are a few reminders about what to avoid. First, avoid minimizing their feelings. Second, avoid trying to convince them life is worth living. If a person is nearing a crisis point, they are not thinking clearly, and philosophical debates about life being worth living tend not to be helpful. Lastly, avoid offering advice on how to fix it. If a person is having a heart attack, you wouldn't tell them to start exercising or to eat a healthier diet. The same is true for someone in a mental health distress or crisis. So here are helpful reminders of what to do when reaching out. First, talk to the person in private and allow them to share what they are experiencing. Second, listen to their story. Third, express concern and caring. A conversation with an extra dose of active listening is a way to show you care and allows you to gain more information about their level of distress. Fourth, ask directly about suicidal thoughts. While some people worry about asking if suicide will increase suicide risk, research suggests that having a conversation about suicide with someone you're worried about helps to decrease suicide risk. Lastly, encourage the person to connect with available resources or mental health services. If they are in a crisis, what they need is to be heard and connected with help.
Start the conversation by saying why you are meeting. For example, I've been noticing lately that you have been stressed and anxious. I also noticed that you have missed a few days of work recently. Say that you want to support them and that you are not there to judge them in any way. I'm concerned about you. I want you to know that I care about you and I'm here to support you. Then ask the open-ended question like, so how are you? Or how have things been going lately? When the person begins talking, listen, completely listen to the conversation and to avoid them shutting down by we don't want you to provide solutions for them or minimize what they are saying. It's time to remain quiet and listen and be empathetic to what they're talking about. If needed, use prompts to have the person continue, such as, that sounds tough. Please go on. Can you tell me more about what that's like? If the person sounds overwhelmed, trapped, or like they feel they are a burden, those are all signs that they may be considering suicide. You can ask them directly if they're suicidal by paying attention also to the words they are using when you are speaking with them. It sounds like you're really going through a tough time when you say that. Are you overwhelmed? And that you feel you are a burden to your family or colleagues. Sometimes when people feel that way, they can become overwhelmed and they start to think about ending their life. Have you been feeling this way? Have you been if the person says no, thank them for letting you know. I care about you. And if the person says yes, thank them for their you. I would like to provide you with few resources. Encourage the person to connect mental health services. If they are in crisis, what they need to do is to be heard and connect them with mental health resources. It's important to remember that you are concerned about somebody. If you're concerned about somebody in the workplace, what you may do depends on your relationship with that person. But if you have a significant concern about someone, be sure to talk confidentially with the person. And you could let somebody know in human resource. It's important to you to take note that the discussion with the employee regarding their mental health should be treated in a way any discussion is about their physical health. Keep the focus on how they are getting help and the treatment, how to assist them in their journey, and making a plan for a reasonable work expectation. You should not ask them for their condition or their personal matters. Most important things to do is to know the resources that are available to support somebody during a mental health crisis. Not only is it important to know the lifeline, which is 988, and also to have them be aware that the person expect when calling the lifeline or text line. The crisis text line and the crisis lifeline is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Responders for both are trained to support individuals in distress. We can also provide you with other support if the person is wanting them. If it's an emergency, such like a suicide or an attempt in progress, call 988. In addition, the resources listed here, many companies provide mental health benefits for employees, such as the Employee Assistant Program, EAP. It's important to familiarize yourself with the available employee benefits, particularly those related to mental health services and support. Some additional resources can be found online are, and you could take a snapshot of these. This is a list of different resources, mental health resources that they could assist you with. And you can also call 988, and they would provide information and mental health resources wherever you are located. So it's a good resource to know, and just call them and ask.
One key thing about 988 is if you're in, say, the St. Louis area code 314, but your phone has an area code for Illinois 618, 988 they don't have the ability to see that you are in St. Louis in the 314 area code. So they will be answering in the 618 area code. They're working on fixing that issue, but remember that you won't always get those resources for the area you might physically be in because your cell phone is from a different area.
I'm sure they would assist you in connecting you with somebody that is in your local area.
They do.
So just reach out to them. They're there to help. But if you would like more information, please don't hesitate to reach out to Phyllis or
We do have a question in the Q&R. It says, do you see technology playing a role in improving mental health and overall preventing suicides in construction industry? So with more and more access to telehealth, and especially, this is only my opinion, it's so new that they really don't have a whole lot of data on it, but I think so, in my opinion, because you have a set appointment time. It's granted, it's not in person, but it's live with a counselor or a professional mental health person, and you're not waiting, and they have the ability to do more also in the telehealth field.
and we know also how demanding the construction industry is. So some you could go on your break and talk to somebody. I feel that it's going to be growing, and some people would rather have that than have to leave or take a half. I would speak with somebody. So it's something worth exploring if you need to.
Thank you guys very much, Phyllis and Barb, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will, like I
Yes.
said, send a recording of today's presentation to all registered attendees. And we encourage you to share with your colleagues. We have a great lineup of additional webinars over the next several weeks, and we hope you'll join us for each of them. Please visit www.constructionsuicideprevention.com for more resources, to register for upcoming webinars, and much more. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.